A side, B side, what side are you on?
All right, welcome back to another episode of A Side, B Side podcast. What side are you on? I know I just completely changed the theme, but whatever. I can do
That's all
that
right.
because I've
You
moved.
were on key. Yeah, you didn't. You didn't change accents and key during it like I did. So
This has been quite the week. So last week I let you know, moving and have moved, and I am now officially I did learn the proper name, a Lincolnite. I am officially a Lincolnite.
Lincolnite. I was way off.
I thought it was going to be Lincolner, or it could have been, Lincolnonian. Lincolnonian, but it is Lincolnite. So officially,
I like to call them just links.
Links. I'm a link. I'm officially a link now, and in this big old city of Lincoln, Nebraska. I have to say, it is really a beautiful city. My daughter and I have been kind of exploring, each night we've, been looking for places because right now my new job is putting us up. And so we've been like looking for places and then, places to stay and then just kind of, venturing to find places to eat and things like that. And we hit a different side of the city tonight that we hadn't seen yet. And it was really pretty. And then she said she was driving earlier and she's like, man, the sunsets here are really gorgeous. So, I am learning from my room to work back to my room. I've got that down. I'm like, I am so good at that.
That's the most important route.
But everybody here, I had heard before I got here, there's a thing called Nebraska Nice, and that like everybody's just kind of really nice. And so far, it has seemed to hold up. Everybody here has been very wonderful. My new job has been amazing, like amazing. Like I even said to my new boss today, I was like, everybody here has been so nice. What's the catch?
Yeah. Like, when does this wear off? Do I get like 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Like first ratings book? Like when is things gonna get real? It's like the first 15 minutes of Real World, but at some point people are gonna start being real, right?
But everybody has just been like so sweet, and they're like, we're so happy you're here and we're so excited for you. So it's been nice. It's been really nice. And I am nervous because Monday will be my first day back on air. And it's really funny because, Adam, you've been here. So I'm here at work, but I'm not on air. So like, I'm kind of like a fiend when you're just like itching. You're like, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing? I got to do something. I don't know what to do. Cause when you
got any production I can do, voiceover?
Yeah, right. Cause when that's your thing, when you do on air, you're like, why am I not on air? I got to be on air. What am I doing? So
they're like, I have no purpose.
Exactly. I'm just kind of taking up space right now. But no, so I start Monday and I'm really excited, and they've been so gracious. So yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, they sought you out, so they're still in the courting phase.
Yeah. I'm excited though. I'm very excited. So join me Monday morning. In Lincoln, Nebraska.
You go to b1073.com and you can listen to her live.
See, I didn't say it, so nobody can be mad at me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not supposed to say where you went?
Oh, no, I don't care.
Oh.
No, I don't care.
I'm not contractually obligated to anyone,
right,
in this scenario. So yeah,
that's why I said I didn't say it. So.
Yeah, b1073.com. They listen live. I'm planning on listening on Monday.
So you actually listened to my last day on my old station.
I did.
And you sent me a photo because it was an emotional morning. And the listeners there were amazing. We kind of just did a whole, send some love, tell me, it was like send Brooke off with some love and best wishes. And man, did those listeners come through.
Yeah. A lot of great stories. And it was just really, it got me thinking about how I had to leave at one point and just like that time. So I'm walking the dog, listening on my headphones, just doing my thing. realizing that there's going to be this post on Nextdoor in our neighborhood that's going to be like, watch out for this middle-aged man walking his dog who's bawling, walking through the neighborhood, just tears streaming down his face. We do not think he is emotionally stable. Please avoid.
Oh man, but yeah, I'm excited for this new adventure. Everybody like that I've kind of talked to has been like, it takes a lot to just up and move across country and start anew. So
well, I mean, it's totally understandable that you'd be rusty because you've taken all of a week off.
The whole week. My gosh.
Like you literally were on air on Friday, moved your entire life over a weekend, and then you're like in the office Monday morning. I'm like, you kidding me?
I know. And I'm like, why am I not on air? I get it. I do need time to acclimate. And that's what they said. We didn't want to just throw you on air. You need time to acclimate, which yes, I do. So,
well, I mean, it would have been a lot to be like, hi, here's the building. This is the studio. See you in 4 hours.
Right. Yeah. But it's fun. It's exciting. I can't wait. Oh man. But anyway, so that's been my week. What about yours, Adam?
I have in sort of solace with your road trip. I have been focusing on road trips this week in entertainment. So that is where the A side is going to go today. I have, been watching kind of the same stuff. And I'm excited that fall series are returning. Mm-hmm. So we've got like, I don't know if you're a mystery person like me and you're also older, you're a big fan of NCIS. So there was a cliffhanger last spring with NCIS. So I have been holding off watching the new one that came out just this week. I've got that set up on the DVR.
Is it, what's his name, smack somebody else in the head?
No, there was an explosion.
Oh.
Yeah. And then like, did he die? Did he, like one of those cliffhangers.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty clear that he didn't end the show, but they're like, why did that happen? Like he faked his death, we think. So there's a lot going on there. Ooh. So like the fall series are back. We've got Why the Last Man has come out. I've been keeping up on that. Only Murders in the Building.
Yes, so good.
Yeah. And then I sort of went down this road trip movie rabbit hole and started watching a bunch of road trip movies because I love road trips and I am weird. I enjoy helping people move, and I was not able to help Brooke move. So I actually today helped another friend move because I was complaining the other day that I wished I could help you, and he was like, well, I'm moving, and I'm like, excellent, I will help you move. So I mean, all day long today.
I hey, look, when we move into our apartment, feel free to come help us move.
Yeah, I know. I want to try to get down there. Not the bus to Lincoln is still something I'm exploring. But yeah, it's been those shows. I am actually super behind on What If. I'm now 2 episodes behind. So that's a little weird. I had been watching those like the moment they came out, and now I am at least 2 episodes behind. So I need to catch up on that. But yeah, it's been a very fast week.
Yeah. Well, so I think I'm an episode behind on What If and 1 behind on Only Murders in the Building. So I need to catch up, which I will do this weekend because I won't. Hopefully, I found a place. So this weekend it'll just be kind of relaxing, and I brought my Fire Stick into the hotel so I can watch it.
Absolutely. I did watch again the Lara Croft, The Cradle of Life, which is the sequel, so we can get our Angelina Jolie reference in.
There you go.
I had forgotten that. So in the first one, Daniel Craig is in it and sort of plays the romantic lead foil, and in the second one, a really young Gerard Butler. So like this early 2000s movies was kind of like the start of these two guys' big careers. So it's not what you expected.
That's pretty cool. All right. So this week, it is your week to go first because I got to kind of so hit you with that surprise two-parter. So it's a bookend.
Yes.
I went first last week and I'll end it off this week.
Which is the way we like to do two-parters. So on the A side this week, we are focusing on road trips and headed down the road. And when I was thinking about this and wishing that I could, that I had the wherewithal to get to Kentucky and help you drive across the country, after hearing a little bit of the story, I'm kind of glad I wasn't, because that sounds like an adventure.
A bad time.
Yeah. Like any road trip, it's going to have its moments that are good and some moments that are a challenge. But in the end, everybody makes it. It was a happy ending. Everyone made it there. So I've been looking at different road trip movies, and I was thinking about where really they all started. And if you go all the way back, there was a series of movies starring Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, and Dorothy Lamour called The Road To. And they sort of started this whole road trip movie genre, or in the very least are some of the most influential. And they started back in 1940, and it was this weird spot in Bing Crosby's career where his star was starting to fade, and he was looking for a way to kind of re-energize it. And so he and Bob Hope got together and they started these series of sort of romance, adventure, satire, comedy films. Of course, there was singing and dancing, and lots of Bob Hope would turn and break the fourth wall, which is still one of my favorite things in all of theater or cinema or TV. Whenever the character turns and actually addresses the audience, that can turn an entire moment for me. I'm like, oh, I wasn't sure on this film, but now I love it. I think it's strictly because of my early exposure to Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Parker Lewis Can't Lose, which was the TV knockoff, basically just a reimagining of Ferris Bueller, but as a TV series that was on, I think, Fox in the early 90s as well.
Yes, it was. Parker. I loved Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Yeah, I thought it was a bigger deal because I would tell people about it and they'd be like, what movie, what series are you talking about? I was like, no, it's Parker Lewis Can't Lose. People are like, we have never heard of that. Actually, it goes all the way back to Dobie Gillis, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, which was on Nick at Night. It was an old black and white series, but it was another high school, college guy who would start every episode by talking to the camera, and I absolutely love that show.
Wait a minute, Dobie Gillis, wasn't that Gilligan?
Yeah, Gilligan played the stoner best friend on Dobie Gillis. What was his name? I'm pulling it up. It was Maynard G. Krebs. Oh yeah, was Bob Denver's role. The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. That'll be an entire episode, because I totally forgot about Dobie. But that's where it all started. And of course, a very young Bob Denver as the stoner best friend. It was kind of like a reimagining of Archie and Jughead, kind of on the screen. Very similar to that sort of style, because it was all about falling in love and the mishaps that would happen there. But back to today's actual topic, the road trip movies. So Bing Crosby and Bob Hope had a series of 7 movies, first starting with Road to Singapore in 1940, going all the way to the last one that was filmed in 1962 called The Road to Hong Kong. They even had another one that was planned in 1977, but unfortunately that was the year that Bing Crosby passed away, so they couldn't film that one. The movies always dealt with sort of a send-up of popular movies at the time, whether it was a jungle adventure or Arabian Nights or going to Alaska or Sailors on the High Seas. It was, kind of setting up the big adventure movies with comedy and slapstick and, of course, songs. And it was, created a pretty strong genre, but it was always about these two guys who worked together, but there was almost an adversarial relationship. They were kind of tough on each other, and it was definitely a TV bromance. And as I'm reading more and more about these, and I remember watching clips of them, I don't know if I've ever seen any of them all the way through, to be completely honest. And as we found when we've talked about older movies on the A side, it is darn hard to find any of these on a streaming service for free. Anything black and white is getting harder and harder to find. Even the colorized versions. It's just anything before 1960, you are challenged. I'm a little shocked that there isn't like a subscription service that caters to that genre, but it's probably because the folks that remember them aren't Netflixing or Hulu priming as much as the rest of us. But when I'm reading all about how they interacted, I was like, you know what? This reminds me of one of my favorite road trip movies from the 1990s, and how weird it was at the time that this road trip movie was then made the next year with the same cast and just a slightly changed plot, and no one really seemed to mind. Well, this kind of fit the Road 2 series, where they were always, the setting would change, but it was always Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, kind of as confidence men, con men, trying to pull off a scheme and falling in love. And there was some singing and dancing, whether that was on the high seas or Alaska or the jungle or in the Arabian Nights. In 1995, one of my favorite movies that I actually saw in the theater, and I quote it all the time, was Tommy Boy, starring Chris Farley and David Spade. That was such a success that they made the exact same movie with some tweaks to the, plot line in 1996 called Black Sheep. So I thought for today, we'd look a little bit at those two films and how they were influenced by the Road 2 series, and why one of them is considered a cult classic. And you couldn't go, in the late 90s, early 2000s, you couldn't be flipping channels and not find Tommy Boy on USA or TBS or TNT or FX or one of those channels on any given Tuesday afternoon, and find yourself watching the entire thing because you found yourself, in one moment you were caught and then you're watching the whole episode or the whole movie again. So Tommy Boy came out in 1995, and of course stars Chris Farley and David Spade. Chris Farley plays the sort of oafish, physical comedy. Everything bad that could happen happens to him. A lot of pratfalls, knocking things over. The whole movie starts out with him running because he's late to class on a college campus and crashing through buildings and knocking people over and barely getting to class. And that sets the stage for the entire film, with sort of this lovable oaf who's kind of a bull in a china shop in everything he does, wherever he goes throughout the entire movie. David Spade comes along as the foil, where he gets to be the complete, not only physical opposite, because Chris Farley is this big, mountain of a man that is full of blustery energy. You've got David Spade, who's sort of the nerdy, skinny, bookwormish, caustic, sarcastic, one-liner guy. And of course, being the skinny, sort of cynical, caustic, sarcastic, 15, 16-year-old that I was, that was I probably enjoyed David Spade more than most people did. I love Chris Farley, but I really enjoyed David Spade because he was always getting the one-liners in. And the rest of my life, I've probably tried to fill that role in various situations. Probably even why I enjoy being on radio, because you get to just make one-liners and respond to things. So Chris Farley is this big oaf. His father, played by Brian Dennehy, passes away, and Tommy has got to take over the business and save the business. They go on this road trip where he's got to go around and sell these brake pads, and he's horrible at it. They have the classic scene where they're in the car and they're flipping the channel, and they're trying to find a song that they both will agree on, and they end up on what is it? It's Don't You Remember That You Told Me That You Love Me, Baby? I don't know if that's going to get us in trouble with rights, but I can't remember the name of the song.
I don't think so.
But it starts out, and they're both like, you can change it if you want to. No, it's okay. I'm cool if you are. And then by the end, like, the quick cut to like later in the song, and they're both singing along and crying, and it's so good. And I the chemistry between them and the lovableness of their characters is what carries Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
You've got great performances by like Rob Lowe as like the kind of the start of Rob Lowe's comeback after kind of flaming out in Hollywood as a leading man because of his bad boy nature with the Brat Pack. He kind of does this mid 90s switch over to comedy, and that eventually leads to him being on Parks and Rec. I don't think he's ever on Parks and Rec without the success of Tommy Boy. He plays a great bad guy who is just kind of the cool jerk that loves to pick on both Tommy and what I'm forgetting David Spade's character's name because I am good at remembering stuff. Well, loves picking on both of them. Bo Derek plays the stepmom who might be evil. It turns out that she is, and is actually married to Rob Lowe's character. Spoiler alert, sorry, the movie came out 25 years ago. Didn't mean to ruin that plot point for you. And there is just a great feeling of you want this guy to succeed. And like you see stuff that happens to him and you feel bad, and he's trying to do the right thing and he's not very good at it. There's a classic scene where they pose, and this is very pre 9/11 because this would never be able to happen after 2001, but they pose as flight attendants and sneak onto an airplane so they can fly from Sandusky, Ohio to Chicago. And they have to do the entire, this is how you put the seatbelt together, and this is where you put on the thing. And Tommy puts on the flotation device, and it's for a child. I'm laughing just thinking about it. And he inflates it, and he starts choking, and he's like almost dying. Meanwhile, David Spade is narrating the entire thing as it's happening. It is a brilliant scene. It kind of encapsulates his version of physical comedy and David Spade with the sort of deadpan, dry, sarcastic wit. It works so well. You want to see Tommy succeed. Every time you watch it, you are rooting for him, and it is a eminently rewatchable movie. And even David Spade, who you're supposed to not like, at first, you come to root for him. You understand where he's coming from, where he doesn't want to be taking this guy across, all of Ohio trying to sell brake pads. It is never going to work, and they're all going to end up out of jobs. And it is their chemistry, but also the characters being lovable that makes Tommy Boy such an enjoyable film. And the script is outstanding. There are, incredibly quotable lines. The scene where Chris Farley is trying to describe what would happen. His dad often told this story about, you could get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a bull's rear end, but why don't you just take my word for it? That's that sort of like earthy wisdom Tommy tries to do, and he ends up like lighting a car on fire and a matchbox car on fire, trying to describe to him, just over the top. By the end, it all works out. It's great. You love it. And it's a movie that you will watch again when you're flipping channels. It's a success. It grosses $32 million on a $20 million budget. Everybody is like, okay, let's do this again. So in 1996, they run it back. David Spade, Chris Farley, they're on a road trip. This time they're in Washington instead of Ohio. It involves politics, which makes things get a little bit weirder. And it's, again, a big oafish guy and a political operative that's tasked with trying to, keep him out of the way, basically.
Mm-hmm.
However, anybody who has seen Tommy Boy and Black Sheep knows that's kind of where the similarities end.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Boy is lovable and enjoyable, and you feel like you can watch it over and over. Black Sheep feels way more cringe comedy, and all the things that were funny about the moments where Chris Farley is being over the top and he's yelling, "Oh my God, the car's on fire!" That was like the people who watched Tommy Boy said, "Oh, Chris Farley's funny when he's doing big outlandish stuff, so we'll just do only big outlandish stuff." But in Tommy Boy, every time he has those moments, like at the beginning when he's running to class, it makes sense. He's running to class because he's Tommy. He woke up late. He's got to get there so he can finally graduate college. And, as he tells David Spade at one point, a lot of people go to college for 7 years. Spade's classic retort being, "Yeah, they're called doctors." that all makes sense and it fits. And every time that Tommy, like when Tommy's being over the top or when he's pretending that he's, got, again, another thing that wouldn't fly in this day and age, near the end of the movie when he straps road flares on and pretends to be a suicide bomber, not something you could do in comedy in this day and age.
Not even the slightest.
Not even the slightest. Something that was allowed in 1995. When he's doing that, it makes sense because he's got to get in that boardroom and stop this merger and stop Zelensky, which is played by Dan Aykroyd. Also, when he was playing smaller roles and being a villain, he's an excellent villain. He should do that more often. I don't know why he didn't do it more often. He's a great villain. It makes sense why he's doing it within the story. Where in Black Sheep, they just seem to create these ridiculous moments that are over the top and often make him look just like a jerk. At the very beginning, Chris Farley's character, Mike, is running around or driving around in a butcher truck with a big megaphone on top, talking about his brother who's running for governor. Because it's a butcher truck, there's dogs chasing it. And then the dogs attack the truck. And now he's yelling and swearing at the dogs, but he's doing it over the megaphone because he leaves the megaphone on. And it's just like, how could that happen? But it doesn't seem to make sense. And the entire rest of Black Sheep follows that, where it's like, okay, we're just going to do ridiculous things. And each time we do something ridiculous, we're going to have to turn up the notch and make it bigger and more outlandish and more bombastic. And it gets to the point where you feel like they took all the good stuff. They missed all the chemistry and the lovableness of the characters in Tommy Boy and thought if we're just loud and we have outlandish situations, then people will like the movie. And so it becomes this sort of remake that doesn't have the same soul. And it is a movie that I saw both of them in the theater on opening night. And I have seen Tommy Boy probably dozens, if not 100 times since. And I've rewatched Black Sheep maybe twice because it's just not any fun. And I think part of it is that as I've been doing some research, they weren't really having any fun in the movie. Whereas like the actors, you could tell the whole cast, the director, the writing, it all seemed cohesive in Tommy Boy. Whereas Black Sheep, they brought in a director who was fresh off of Wayne's World. And Penelope Spheris, has been quoted saying that she didn't find David Spade funny at all and basically didn't want him in the movie. Well, you can't sign up for a Chris Farley, David Spade buddy comedy
and not have David Spade.
And not have David Spade, or spend the whole time not liking all the stuff he's doing. So the two of them have been reported, have both talked about how they did not have a good relationship. The script was rewritten several times. It feels like it was forced. We've all had those moments, and Brooke, you've probably been through this, where you go out with a group of friends and you have a great night. And it's just one of those perfect nights where jokes are hidden and everyone's having a good time. The food's great and everyone's laughing. And then you're like, we should do this again. But then you wouldn't like go out the very next night with the same people when everybody's maybe had a little too much fun the night before. And you all feel like you're supposed to go out because you said you would, but now no one's really into it and it feels forced. And like the jokes aren't laughing because you just heard them yesterday. And you're like, okay, we probably forced this. We shouldn't have tried to do so much. We should have just let the really good night happen and not try to force it. That kind of feels like what happened with Black Sheep. They were like, okay, that worked. Let's just do it again, run it all back. And everyone was like, well, we've kind of lost the magic of the moment and it'll never be the same.
Yeah.
So, while there is one great moment in Black Sheep, and that, in my opinion, and it is the only thing that I have ever quoted from the movie Black Sheep. At one point, Spade and Farley are high on, I believe, I think it's marijuana, or maybe it's there's something in the car that is making them act differently, and they spend it in a like probably 30 seconds to 90 seconds just row. That's a funny word, row. And so I've quoted that dozens of times, but that is the only memorable moment that has stuck with me for Black Sheep. Whereas for Tommy Boy, there are probably 15 different scenes that get referenced. And in my group of friends, things that I can, even a group text could mention, and everyone's going to know, like right away. Quit playing with your dinghy. Another one. I've literally used the bull T-bone line when I was doing outside sales and gotten a sale out of it. Not because it was a good line, but because the person I was talking to had seen Tommy Boy and was like, I love that movie. Okay, I'll buy what you're selling.
Right.
And I am not a good salesperson. I've had, Brooke, I was a salesperson at the radio station we worked at for a little bit. And I was so good at that. They were like, hey, you should be on air instead. So if I can use a line from a movie to make a sale, and at this job that I was working, I was not making a lot of sales. It definitely has to be the better of the two. So you're asking yourself, well, Adam, you've talked about 7 movies by Bing Crosby and Bob Hope. You've talked about 2 movies with David Spade and Chris Farley. But if I haven't seen them, how would I ever see any of these movies? Well, this is the part of the A-side where we talk about where you can go and check out all of these movies. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, all the Road to movies with Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, I have not been able to find a single place where you can watch them for free. If you as a listener know of a place that we can watch some of these older movies for free, please let me know, because I cannot find them and it's getting very frustrating. You can always find them on iTunes. They're all on Amazon Prime, but you're going to have to rent them for $3.99. And renting movies feels so late 1900s.
Well, it was.
Yeah. So all the Road to movies are available to rent. You can find Tommy Boy for free or as part of the subscription with Pluto TV, Fubo TV, and Philo, which, in a rare occurrence, I am not currently subscribing to any of those. So I know. I thought I was subscribed to everything. It's also available to rent on YouTube, Google Play, Apple TV, Amazon Prime. Black Sheep is available, which this is weird. Tommy Boy, the vastly superior of the 2 movies, you can't find for free on any of the major ones. You have to pay for it, because I think they know people will pay to see Tommy Boy when they're like, hey, I haven't watched that in a while. I don't have it on DVD. I don't have a DVD player anymore. Well, it's a DVD player. We'll pay $3.99 to rent it. Whereas no one will pay $3.99 to rent Black Sheep, because it is part of your subscription with Hulu, part of your Sling TV subscription, part of your Starz subscription, part of your Amazon Prime subscription. So if you want to watch the movie that no one wants to watch, you can certainly watch it for free. But if you want to watch the better of the 2, Tommy Boy, you're going to have to pay. I highly recommend watching Tommy Boy if you've never seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a long time. It's definitely worth $3.99. You can also find it almost any garage sale, or if you go to Goodwill or your local secondhand store. It was a huge hit on DVD and VHS, so it is one that you can often find for $1 at your local Goodwill or whatnot, and I highly recommend picking it up if you still have a DVD player, or if you know what the DVD player is.
I think most people still do.
I don't know. I work with a lot of younger folks, and none of them have DVDs. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah. Or even a DVD player. Everything is streaming. I mean, if you are 21 and your formative years, so like the last 10 years, that goes, you've pretty much been streaming everything, which is kind of crazy.
Well,
I was like,
my daughter knows what a DVD player is, but
yeah, many do, but I've been surprised how many times I mentioned DVDs, and the kids at work are like, okay, old guy.
Okay, old timer. Thanks there, bud.
Why don't you go watch your shows in the back?
All right. So is that the A-side?
That is the A-side. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to mention about Black Sheep. It does have a very strange over-the-top performance by Gary Busey. And if you are a fan of 80s action movies, Gary Busey's just a weird dude anyway. And it's basically like they said, hey, just be weird. And so his role in Black Sheep is he looks like he's the only one having fun in the movie. So if you do watch Black Sheep, definitely pay attention to his role. That is something else you can enjoy.
Awesome. All right. So there you go. That's the A side. So Adam, last week, I kind of hit you with the surprise that this was going to be a two-parter. So just to kind of recap, we've got a couple that, she claimed she wanted an abortion. And then we've got John Christie, who all of a sudden is a doctor now and performing abortions. And then the husband, Timothy, he tells Timothy, I'm going to take your daughter and give her to a couple because if you show up anywhere with her and without your wife, it's going to raise too many questions. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
That's where we left off.
It was an incredibly convoluted story that just kept getting more and more layers. Like we turn one corner to be like, oh, not near the end yet.
So many layers. Sarah, who is a friend of the podcast, said, I feel like I need a flow chart to keep up with this guy.
Yeah, it's complicated because at one point last time I was like, oh yeah, it's about this couple and the bit, and I was like, but yeah, no, that's like the side story. That's not even the main guy.
That's not even the main guy. So we talked about this guy, Ludovic Kennedy, who is a therapist, author. He kind of theorizes that John Christie strangled the baby Geraldine that day and then placed her in the second floor flat with her mom. So when Beryl's friend Joan returned, remember Joan had been there earlier and knocked on the door, and she was like surprised because Beryl didn't answer the door.
Yeah, because she never goes anywhere. So.
Right. So when Beryl's friend Joan returned, John informed her that Beryl and Geraldine had gone, but then Joan saw Geraldine's high chair and stroller. So he says, yeah, you need to go and not come back. Creepy. Yeah. So then John moves the bodies to a wash house that work had been completed on. And Timothy, who had gone to Merthyr, he returns on about November 23rd, and he's asking, like, how's my daughter? Where's my daughter? What's going on with my daughter? And John says, look, you need to leave immediately or you're going to get in trouble. You'll see your daughter in a few weeks. Now, if you remember back to episode 31, when we talked about H.H. Holmes, it's probably a bad sign if they're telling you, oh yeah, go away now. You'll see him later. You're not going to see him again later.
Yeah, that's not likely to be a true story.
No. So Timothy returns to Merthyr and he lies to his family about his wife Beryl and their daughter Geraldine. It seems that Timothy was brought down by his own mother. I see layer upon layer. It's like an onion. You just keep on peeling layers. So she decided that she wanted to check on Beryl and the baby. So she found that Beryl had not, in fact, gone to visit her father, like Timothy had said, and that Timothy was staying at his sister's house alone. So she's like, something's not right here. So Beryl, Geraldine, and the furniture are all missing from Timothy's house. Timothy's aunt then ends up confronting him with all this information, because mom's, sisters talk with mom and, her sister.
Understandably.
He then breaks down and goes to the police station in Merthyr Tidal. And he says, I have disposed of my wife. I put her down the drain. He initially didn't want to implicate John in the story. So he said a stranger had given him some help to abort Beryl's baby. He gave her meds, but warned her not to use them. He then says that the next day he went to work, and when he came home, he found Beryl dead. The next morning, fearing that police would think he killed her, he stuffed her down the drain outside the front door. And then he made arrangements for someone to take Geraldine. This is what he's telling police.
Right.
Police in Notting Hill were notified, and they go to the house to investigate. It takes 3 men to move the manhole cover that Timothy says he moved to place Beryl down in there. So obviously Timothy's story not adding up.
Yeah, it's a heck of a manhole cover also. Jeez.
Right. And we know Timothy is like a little bit scrawny. So there's no way if it took 3 of them, he's not moving that by himself.
And that just goes to show you how strong the Ninja Turtles are.
Shut up. So once they open, no body is discovered. You know, Timothy says, I just shoved her right there. Well, she would be right there if they had shoved her right, but she's not. So Timothy was told of the discovery. And then he's like, oh, well, okay. So what really happened was there was no stranger. It was Reg, aka John. He tells the full details of what happened. And he said he went along with it to protect himself from John. He tells investigators everything from finding Beryl to helping move her to John finding a home for Geraldine and coming back to check on her. And she's not there. And the police, I'm sure they're like, what in the heck is going on? But they go ahead and they check. They go back and they search 10 Rillington Place. But initially, they don't find anything. I'm just guessing they didn't look very hard, though, because here's the thing. There was a thigh bone that was leaning up against the fence in the garden. John's dog had dug it up and a skull, but that was missed as well. So they didn't look very hard.
Just like, what is it, Halloween? They thought they were just decorations?
Right. They're like, oh, you're just getting an early jump. Or maybe because it was like November, they're like, oh, you just forgot to take down your decorations. No.
That's crazy.
So on January 11th of 1950, Timothy was put on trial for the murder of his daughter. Prosecution decided not to pursue a second murder charge for Beryl. I don't know why.
Why?
So John...
A whole lot of sense.
Right. Maybe because they couldn't, I don't know if it was the body thing, but they didn't find the body of the baby either. So...
Yeah, that's weird.
So John, of course, is a principal witness for the Crown, and he denies all of Timothy's accusations. He talks about the lively fights that the couple had, and, he's just putting all of the couple's business out there, which, I mean, it is true. They did have some lively fights, but you were also responsible for her death.
Right. But he sees it as an opportunity to skate on the whole thing.
Exactly. So the jury finds Timothy guilty despite learning about John's criminal history. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Despite John's criminal... Excuse me.
Brooke is allergic to criminal histories.
Who needs it?
That's how she does background checks. Oh, my nose tickles. You got a criminal history.
So the jury finds out about John's criminal history of theft and violence, but despite that, they still find Timothy guilty. Timothy was set to be hanged on January 31st, but appealed. His appeal on February 20th failed, and he was in fact hanged at Her Majesty's prison of Pentonville on March 5th of 1950. John, in the meantime, gets a job working at the post office savings bank. When his past is revealed, he ends up getting fired. He was fired 4 years later on April 4th of 1950. So I mentioned the skull and the thigh bone, but there were some more blunders made in this investigation. So the thing about the femur bone is it's not like they missed it in a big area. It was in a 16 by 14 enclosed area, and the fence is parallel to the wash house where Beryl and Geraldine will be found. We'll talk about that later. Now, Adam, because of the move, we have talked about the size of the truck that I had and the storage unit. So 16 by 14 is not a big area.
No, it is not. That's like 160 square feet.
So they really weren't looking. They really couldn't have been looking.
They did one of those. It's like when your kids say they can't find something.
Right.
And all they did was they walked into the room and yeah, no, I can't find it.
I don't see it. Exactly.
And they didn't really look.
There were several different searches at 10 Rillington Place after Timothy's confession. No evidence is ever found. And the wash house, which is directly next door, was never searched. There was no organized search of the crime scene. If there had been, they would have obviously discovered the skull that John's dog had dug up. He threw the skull into an abandoned, bombed out house nearby. The searches that were conducted show a severe lack of expertise in handling forensic evidence. Okay, so we're going to talk about Timothy's confession. So he obviously had no clue where Beryl's body was. So even as an accomplice, there had to be another person working with him. This should have prompted a thorough search of the house, the garden, the wash house nearby, where they do end up finding the body, and construction had just been completed at that wash house, like we mentioned. If you've ever watched any kind of true crime story where there's construction involved, check the construction site.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's cliche now, but it wasn't such a cliche then, but
maybe
still. I mean, Jimmy Hoffa hadn't disappeared yet, so.
It's true. Also, police seemingly believed John's statements without any major inquiry, even using him as a witness at Timothy's trial, presumably because he was a former war reserve policeman. I guess he was like one of their own, even though he had quite the criminal past, including malicious wounding. Remember his former lover? Right. All while Timothy had no violence in his past. John had also claimed to be an abortionist on several occasions before and after Timothy's trial. He would tell this to women in cafes all the time. I'm sure it was women that he was targeting or whatever, but he's like, yeah, I'm an abortionist. What is that, a pickup line? Girl.
Different time, I guess. I don't know.
After Timothy's trial, a few years passed without anything of major note happening. New tenants move into 10 Rillington Place. Many of them were Black immigrants from the West Indies, which horrified both John and Ethel. Don't forget, Ethel, John's wife. He is still married. They were both raging racists. So, I mean,
I am shocked.
It's not enough to be a murderer and a rapist. You got to be a racist too. I mean, just trifecta.
Little column A, a little column B.
Right. I mean, I'm totally shocked. I'm shocked. Yeah. Things come to a head when Ethel had one of her neighbors prosecuted for assault, and John negotiated with the poor man's lawyer center to have exclusive use of this man's back garden.
It's a weird thing to request.
Yeah, exactly.
You attacked my wife. I want your garden.
It gave John space between him and his neighbors, and of course the ability to hide his crimes, which would be human remains. So John is free, and the only person that can pin anything on him has been dead for a little bit now. So I guess why stop now, right?
Yeah.
So on December 14th of 1952, John Christie strangles Ethel Christie. Yeah, his wife.
Finally. I mean, she finally comes around to her.
He then created several excuses for her disappearance. In a letter to relatives, he said Ethel's rheumatism was acting up, so she couldn't write herself. To one neighbor, he said she was visiting her relatives in Sheffield. To another neighbor, he said that she had gone to Birmingham. John ends up resigning from his job on December 6th, 8 days before the murder. He remains unemployed on December 17th, so he sells Ethel's wedding ring and watch to support himself. They sold for about £2 a piece, which today would be about $27. Then in January, he sells the furniture, getting £11, which today would be about $147. John kept cutlery, 2 chairs, a mattress, and a kitchen table. So from January 23rd, my birthday, many years later, to March 20th, he receives unemployment weekly in the amount of £3, which is about $40. On January 26th of 1953, John forged Ethel's signature and stole the money in her bank account. On January 27th of 1953, John sold some of Ethel's clothing for about £3. And then on March 7th, he received a check from the Bradford Clothing and Supply Company for £8. Mind you, he's unemployed, so he's got a bunch of time on his hands, right?
Yep.
Which means plenty of time for more murder. So 3 women became victims to John Christie: Kathleen Maloney, Rita Nelson, and Hectorina McLennan. Kathleen was a sex worker from the Ladbroke Grove area. Rita was from Belfast, Ireland. She was visiting with her sister in Ladbroke Grove, and she was 6 months pregnant at the time that she met her demise with John. And Hectorina first met John in a cafe. She was living with her boyfriend, Alex Baker, in London. All 3 met on several occasions, and John even let Alex and Hectorina stay at Willington Place while they were looking for their own place. So he gained their trust. So then he invites Hectorina back to his flat, where he then murders her and then tells Alex, I don't know. I haven't seen her.
Don't know where she went.
Maybe she ran away. I don't know. Of course, the boyfriend is distraught because he's not seen her. And he just keeps, asking about her. And he's like asking him to help her search for him. Oof. Can you imagine? You find out you ask the person that murdered your girlfriend to search for her.
I feel like it would be more common than.
Oh, it might be. Yeah. So for his final murders, John modified his gassing technique that he first used on Muriel Edie. He used a rubber tube connected to a gas pipe in the kitchen, which he kept closed off with what's called a bulldog. It's like a binder clip, but the clips are metal. He would seat his victims in the kitchen, and he would release the clip on the tube and let the gas leak into the room. The Braeburn report points out that John's gassing technique was exceptionally flawed because he would be overpowered by the gas as well. So the gas made the victims drowsy, and it also made him drowsy. So
hard to murder when you're drowsy.
Right? I'm so sleepy. I want to kill you, but I can't.
Just gonna lay down for a little bit. Hold on.
So he would recover from overgassing himself, and then he would strangle his victims with a rope. Just as John had done with Muriel, he raped Kathleen, Rita, and Hectorina repeatedly until they died. This gave John a reputation as a necrophiliac once his crimes were discovered. So after each death, all by eventual ligature strangulation, he would put cloth between their legs and then wrap their semi-nude bodies in blankets before putting them in a small alcove behind the kitchen wall. Yeah, the kitchen wall. Okay.
Just all in the walls.
Later, he ended up covering the entrance to the alcove with wallpaper because that prevents smell.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty powerful wallpaper.
So John Christie moved out of 10 Millington Place on March 20th of 1953 after he was busted for fraudulently subletting his apartment for money. He was charging them £7, which today would be about $219. The landlord showed up and found a couple in the apartment instead of the Christies. Well, at this point, he's like, all right, you got to go. So he kicks them out. He then allowed the tenant of the 3rd floor flat, Beresford Brown, to use John's kitchen. Beresford. Beresford noticed a smell, so he began to clean, and he decided to install a shelf for his wireless radio. So he peels the wallpaper back, and he learned, hey, wait, there's a door. Uh-oh. So he shines a light in the crack of the door, and he sees what he thinks is the body of a naked woman. So he's freaked out. He immediately calls the police. Police show up along with an inspector from Scotland Yard and a pathologist. And they find, of course, the bodies. A citywide, of course, obviously left by John because he was the prior tenant. So a citywide search for John begins. John had actually rented a room at Rounton House in King's Cross. for 7 nights, but he only stayed for 4. After that, he wandered around London, sleeping in cafes and movie theaters and on benches. On March 31st, 1953, John Christie was arrested on an embankment by Putney Bridge without any incident. All he had in his possession were some coins, his wallet, his marriage certificate, to the wife that he killed.
Yeah, that's weird.
A ration book, a union card, and old newspaper clippings about Timothy Evans. Initially, he only admitted to the 3 women in his alcove, but then John Christie eventually admitted to the murder of Ethel Christie, of Beryl Evans, for which we know Timothy had been put to death, although John denies killing Geraldine. Dude, we know you did it.
It was like, where's Geraldine then?
Right. So on June 5th of 1953, John also admitted to the murders of Muriel, Edie, and Ruth first. John claims Ethel's movements in bed awakened him. She was blue in the face and choking. He assumed it was too late to call for help. So unable to bear her suffering, he got a stocking and strangled her. Because that's not going to make her suffer.
I'm putting you out of your misery. Stop struggling.
Right. He also claimed that she tried to kill herself, which he realized upon finding his empty bottle of phenobarbital tablets that he took for insomnia. John says that the other victims, they weren't his fault. They were just women of disrepute and aggressors, so he had no choice.
Oh, right. Yeah, no choice.
Mm-hmm. John was only tried for Ethel's murder. The trial began June 22nd of 1953. Can I just say the legal system in the UK is no joke, because they played no games. They were like arrested, tried, let's go.
Yeah. Like even Tim, he had his like appeal was like heard the next month. It was like, dang.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it was like, nope, denied. And then the next month it was like, hanged.
Yep,
like,
you're dead. He'd be like, and 15 years later, they had trial number 2.
Right. So he was in the same court that Timothy had been tried 3 years prior. And, when he was the key witness against him, which I love because I feel like karma. So John used an insanity plea. Dr. Matheson, who was a doctor at the prison, HM Prison Brixton, was a witness for the prosecution and stated that while John had a personality disorder, he was not, in fact, insane. So the jury then rejected his insanity plea and found John guilty after 85 minutes. Dang. 85 minutes. So on June 29th, John announced that he would not, in fact, appeal. John Christie was put to death by hanging on July 15th of 1953 at HM Prison, Pentonville. Okay, again, the UK legal system does not play around. Okay, June 22nd, he's tried. July 15th, he's hanged.
Yeah, they're like, well, it's done now. Let's get this over with.
His executioner was Albert Pierrepoint. And this is relevant because he also was the executioner of Timothy Evans.
Right. So I was like, I think that's the same prison.
Yes. Once John was secured for his hanging, he complained that his nose itched, to which Albert replied, "It won't bother you for long."
Oh, gallows humor.
John's body was buried in the precincts of the prison. John collected trophies from his victims in the form of pubic hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's suspected that John is responsible for more murders than the ones at Rillington Place, but it's never been confirmed. The innocence of Timothy Evans following John's conviction, there was substantial controversy surrounding the trial of Timothy, Mm-hmm. The controversy caused then Home Security David Maxwell Fyfe to commission an inquiry led by John Scott Henderson, the recorder of Portsmouth. Henderson interviewed John before his death and also 20 other witnesses and concluded that Timothy was in fact guilty and John's confessions were unreliable. This inquiry was criticized because it was concluded within a week, because they play no games there.
Yeah, they're just like, well, we didn't do anything wrong. Bye.
Yeah. Also, it was accused of being prejudiced against Timothy's innocence. The controversy continues. This led to a second inquiry that was chaired by High Court Judge Sir Daniel Braben, which took a much longer time to investigate and conclude. It was concluded that it was, quote, more probable than not that Timothy killed Beryl, but not Geraldine. They blamed John for that due to her continued presence, drawing attention to them. Remember he said, if you're seen with the baby, it's going to draw attention.
Right, yeah.
So Braeburn also felt, due to the lack of certainty of the case, that there could be a reasonable doubt, and retried. These conclusions were used by the Home Secretary Roy Jenkins to recommend a posthumous pardon for Timothy, which was in fact granted, since he was tried and executed for the murder of Geraldine. The pardon was
not going to do him a lot of good.
Right. The pardon was granted on October 18th of 1966, which I don't understand, because if you think he committed a murder, why would you pardon him still?
Yeah.
I guess just because it was the wrong person.
Yeah, he was pardoned for being convicted of the wrong murder. You know, but like unless doesn't sound like there was any descendants that like could be impacted by some sort of, you know, I don't get why you even do the pardon. It just seems like paperwork.
Right. There was already a debate in the UK over the use of the death penalty. This case, Timothy's execution, and some other controversial cases contributed to the suspension of it in 1965 and the subsequent abolition of capital punishment in the UK for murder.
Oh, well, there you go. Now they're not so efficient with the hangings.
In January of 2003, the Home Office awarded Timothy's half-sister, Mary Westlake, and his sister, Eileen Asby, an ex gratia payment as compensation for the miscarriage of justice at his trial.
Okay, so there was surviving family that could be.
So in 1969, the play Christie in Love by Howard Brenton opened. Christie's murders were dramatized in the film 10 Wellington Place from 1971, starring Richard Attenborough.
Oh.
And in 2016, the BBC commissioned a 3-part biographical crime drama focusing on the Christie murders. The series Rillington Place was broadcast between November and December of 2016, starring Tim Roth and Samantha Morton and Jodie Comer from Killing Eve. There you go. That's the conclusion of the B-side of the murderer, John Christie.
I've checked it out. I really enjoy both Tim Roth and Samantha Morton.
I know. And Jodie Comer.
Yeah, I had never heard of this. Interesting.
There you go. That's the B-side. Where you want to be side.
I think it's interesting. Like, I think we talked about how at the very beginning of last episode, when it became a 2-parter, we talked about how he was responsible for a bunch of murders and the death of an innocent man, but in a weird way, he's responsible for like the abolition of the death penalty in England.
It's true. You can go roundabout and look at it like that.
That's really interesting. The serial killer that actually ended up stopping people from getting killed.
Mm-hmm. There you go. What do you think about that?
That was a lot. Like, it's just that it was a good thing it was 2 weeks because we had a lot to cover. But then my brain was like, okay, I'm trying to, Sarah said, you have the whiteboard and Charlie Day from Sunny in Philadelphia trying to figure everything out. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it feels like we didn't even probably know all the other stuff he did.
Right. We
It didn't
barely
happen at
touched
that
it.
house. They didn't even touch on it.
But there it is. There it is. There it is. All right. So, of course, Adam, the website.
A-side, B-side podcast.square.site.
Mm-hmm. So you can head on over there. There's pictures from the episode. There's also sources. We have those for you each and every week. Also, if you'd like to help out the podcast, you can do that by heading on over to our website as well. We can purchase some merch over there. Another way you can help the podcast is buy us a coffee. It's buymeacoffee.com/A-side-B-side-pod. We've got social media. You can, of course, always email us, asidebsidepodcasts@gmail.com. You can get to us on social media. We've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got Twitter. We've also got a YouTube. So you can check us out on YouTube, like, share, comment, forward, all that. But there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Brooke.